I think it is a self-contradictory report in many ways, and the problem with it is that it doesn't come to the conclusions that are the logical follow-through from the facts that it identifies. It does say that it is reasonable to assume that US weapons have been used to commit violations of international humanitarian law, and yet it does not say that Israel has violated international humanitarian law. It does say that Israel has restricted humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and yet it says that currently Israel is not restricting US-funded humanitarian assistance in Gaza, which is an absurd thing to say, given that the IDF is at this moment closing and has closed for several days the Rafah crossing point, which is the main entry point for humanitarian assistance. So I think that in some ways the administration and the State Department are trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to be seen to be levying criticism while steering clear of the legal determinations that would bind their hands and potentially lead to restrictions on arms transfers in particular. The administration is trying to retain policy discretion. That once you come to a legal finding, for example, that US-funded humanitarian assistance is being restricted, it is US law that you cannot provide assistance, including military assistance to a country. Once you come to a conclusion similarly that international humanitarian law has been violated, there are both laws and policies in the US that would restrict the flow of arms. So it is clear, I think, that the administration is doing this in order to continue the flow of arms, despite the specific restrictions that have been placed on shipments of, for example, 2,000-pound bombs. And that is why it has not come to any legally binding conclusions.
Let's see. Sorry, it's under these circumstances.
Thank you tremendously.
We're here. We're not going.
So over the course of the last 3 months, while the State Department was working on its report, I had the opportunity to work with an incredible group of experts, of international law experts, of US military targeting experts, of human rights experts, who looked at these very questions. And what we concluded was starkly different in some ways from what the State Department's report has found. First of all, I think we are in agreement with the State Department that the large majority of weapons involved in the decimation of Gaza, in the killing of so many civilians, are in some way linked to the United States, particularly the Air Force jets that are dropping most of the, or all of the air-to-ground munitions that have caused so much harm are of US origin. These are American weapons. Most of the bombs are American. Most of the artillery shells, the tank shells, there is significant American role in terms of the armaments being used here. What we have seen at the same time is those armaments being used to kill at this point over 34,000 people in Gaza, of whom over 14,000 are children, in many cases striking targets in which there was no identified military objective. We have seen rules of engagement on the part of Israel that seem contrary to international both military best practice as well as commonly accepted international law when it comes to the principles of proportionality and discrimination.
This is not a report from an NGO. It's not a report from a news organization. It's not a term paper by an undergrad. It is a document produced by the government of the United States of America, which has the most well-funded intelligence community on the face of the earth. Presumably, if there was an interest, they could acquire some of this non-public information and fill in the gaps. Similarly, there's special pleading in the report at various points that the State Department cannot assess whether U.S. defense articles were used in particular instances. I myself have seen open source reporting indicating for some of these attacks that U.S. defense articles were used. This is particularly true for any strikes involving manned aircraft, since virtually all manned aircraft, I think, and strike aircraft in Israel's arsenal are U.S. origin. And I think most of the air-to-ground munitions coming off those airplanes are also U.S. origin. Those are facts that the State Department could run to ground. Over the years, there have been various announcements that certain actors have committed genocide. So, for example, ISIS. At the tail end of the Trump administration, Secretary Pompeo announced that China had committed genocide against the Uyghurs. And And going back to the Bush administration, second Bush administration, Secretary Colin Powell made an announcement that Sudan had committed genocide in Darfur. And I would just say in that instance, the U.S. government, unlike here, went out of its way to actually engage in fact-finding this. So the State Department dispatched researchers to Chad to interview refugees about the ongoing atrocities in Darfur, so that the U.S. government can make informed assessments of the facts and apply the law to that. And we have no indication that took place here. There's no indication that the U.S. government tried to interview people in Egypt or elsewhere in the regions, refugees from Gaza. So there was a lot more fact finding that probably could have taken place here. It's the department may have been a passive recipient of reports from media organizations, from non-governmental organizations, and from civil society, but it doesn't seem to be the case that they actively went out there and proactively sought the information.
دمار كامل دمار كامل.
What the